Alexander was born into a world where prophecy and power collided. July 356 BC, thunder split the Macedonian sky the night he entered history. His mother, Olympias, a priestess of ancient mystery cults, whispered that Zeus himself had fathered her son. His father, King Philip II, was reshaping warfare itself, forging the phalanx that would crush Greek city-states. Between divine claims and military genius, Alexander's childhood was no ordinary royal upbringing. He was raised on the edge of myth and empire, taught from birth that greatness wasn't a possibility, it was an obligation. Destiny didn't wait for him. It demanded him. Alexander's deadliest weapon wasn't bronze or iron, it was his mind. At 13, Aristotle himself became his teacher, transforming a prince into a philosopher king. In the gardens of Mysa, they dissected not just ideas but the very nature of power, ethics, and human potential. Alexander devoured knowledge, biology, rhetoric, geometry, politics. But nothing consumed him like Homer's Iliad. He memorized entire passages, slept with a dagger and the epic beneath his pillow, and modeled himself after Achilles, the hero who chose eternal glory over a long life. Aristotle gave him the tools to think. Homer gave him the hunger to transcend. This fusion of intellect and ambition would define how he conquered, governed, and ultimately tried to merge East and West into something the world had never seen. The Black Stallion was a monster, wild, violent, untamable. Thessalian horse traders had brought Bucephalus to Philip's court, but seasoned warriors couldn't get near the beast without risking their lives. 13-year-old Alexander watched differently. While others saw a dangerous animal, he saw a problem to solve. The horse wasn't vicious, it was terrified of its own shadow dancing across the ground. Alexander made a wager with his father. "Let me try or pay the enormous price yourself." He walked calmly to Bucephalus, turned him toward the sun so the shadow disappeared, whispered words no one else heard, and mounted him in one fluid motion. The crowd fell silent. Philip wept. In that moment, everyone understood. Alexander didn't just see solutions where others saw obstacles. He saw the invisible forces that controlled outcomes. Bucephalus would carry him across 3 continents, through battles that changed history, becoming more than a horse. He became a symbol of Alexander's supernatural ability to master chaos itself. 336 BC, Philip II was murdered at his daughter's wedding, stabbed by his own bodyguard in a conspiracy that remains unsolved. Alexander was 20 years old. The throne was his, but so was chaos. Greek city-states that Philip had subdued saw opportunity in a boy king. Rivals within Macedonia whispered about succession. Enemies circled like wolves. Alexander's response was immediate and merciless. He eliminated potential usurpers, rode south with lightning speed, and when Thebes dared to rebel, he made an example that echoed through history. The entire city was razed to the ground, its population sold into slavery. Only the house of the poet Pindar was spared. The message was clear: Alexander honored culture, but defiance meant annihilation. In months, he transformed from prince to king to the undisputed master of Greece. His authority wasn't inherited. It was seized, forged in blood and strategic terror. Spring 334 BC, Alexander stood at the edge of the known world. Behind him, Greece and Macedonia. Ahead, the Hellespont, the narrow strait that separated Europe from Asia, civilization from the unknown. As his fleet of warships prepared to cross, Alexander performed a ritual that revealed everything about his mindset. Wearing full armor, he hurled a spear from his ship into the Asian shore and declared the entire continent Spear One Land, his by right of conquest before a single battle was fought. When he stepped onto the beach, he made a pilgrimage to Troy, the legendary city of the Iliad. There, he honored Achilles at his tomb, running naked around it in tribute. His closest companion, Hephaestion, honored Patroclus. The message was unmistakable. This wasn't just a military campaign. It was a quest to surpass mythology itself. With 40,000 men, Alexander invaded the Persian Empire, a dominion that stretched from the Mediterranean to India, ruled by the King of Kings. The invasion of Persia was the moment when mortal ambition became immortal legend. May 334 BC, the river Granicus. Alexander faced his first real test against Persian forces. 20,000 cavalry and Greek mercenaries positioned on the far bank, waiting. His generals advised caution, a tactical delay. Alexander's response was pure Alexander. He ordered an immediate frontal assault across the river, uphill into the teeth of the enemy. It was tactically insane. It was psychologically brilliant. He led from the front, charging into the Granicus on Bucephalus while Persian nobles threw javelins at him specifically. His helmet was split. A Persian commander's sword was mid-swing at his head when Clytus the Black, his childhood friend, severed the attacker's arm at the last second. Alexander nearly died in the first 20 minutes. But his sheer audacity shattered Persian morale. They had never seen a king fight like a common soldier. The Persians broke. Victory at Granicus announced to the ancient world, this wasn't Philip's son. This was something new, something terrifying. November 333 BC, the narrow coastal plain of Issus. For the first time, Alexander stood across the battlefield from Darius III himself. The great king, the ruler of the largest empire on earth, commanding over 100,000 men. Alexander had perhaps 40,000. But Darius had made a critical error. He chose terrain that neutralized his numerical advantage. Alexander saw it instantly. He deployed his phalanx to hold the center while personally leading his companion cavalry in a diagonal strike directly at Darius's position. It was audacious to the point of madness, targeting the enemy king himself. The plan worked devastatingly well. As Alexander's cavalry smashed through Persian lines, heading straight for the royal chariot, Darius panicked. The King of Kings fled the battlefield, abandoning his mother, wife, and children. Alexander captured the Persian royal family and treated them with extraordinary respect, calling Darius's mother Mother, and ensuring no harm came to them. This calculated mercy was strategic genius. It painted Alexander as a legitimate successor to Persian power, not a foreign destroyer. Issus didn't just defeat an army. It shattered the myth of Persian invincibility. January 332 BC, the island fortress city of Tyre. Impregnable walls rising from the sea, a naval power that had resisted empires for centuries. They laughed at Alexander's demand for surrender. They shouldn't have. What followed was a siege that redefined the possible. For 7 months, Alexander's engineers performed what seemed like sorcery. They built a causeway, a massive mole of stone and timber, extending half a mile from the mainland to the island. When Tyrian ships attacked the causeway, Alexander built siege towers on it. When they used fire ships, he rebuilt. He brought in warships from conquered cities, surrounding Tyre completely. He designed siege engines that could breach walls from ships. The city that had survived Nebuchadnezzar finally fell. Alexander's forces broke through the walls, and in his fury at the prolonged resistance, he crucified 2,000 Tyrian men and sold 30,000 into slavery. It was brutal. It was calculated. The message to every other city in the Persian Empire was clear. Negotiation is possible, but resistance is death. Time, resources, obstacles. Nothing would stop him. Winter 332 BC, Alexander entered Egypt not as a conqueror but as a liberator. The Egyptians had suffered under Persian rule for 2 centuries and welcomed him with flowers and celebration. He was crowned pharaoh at Memphis in traditional ceremony, performing the sacred rituals, honoring Apis the bull god. But Alexander had a deeper hunger. He journeyed across 300 miles of brutal Libyan desert to the Oracle of Siwa, the most sacred shrine in the ancient world, where the god Ammon spoke through his priests. The journey nearly killed his expedition. They ran out of water, lost their way, and according to legend were saved by rain and guided by ravens. What happened inside the temple remains one of history's greatest mysteries. Alexander went into the inner sanctuary alone. What questions did he ask? What answers did he receive? Ancient sources claim the oracle confirmed he was the son of Zeus Ammon, not Philip, legitimizing both his divine status and his right to rule Egypt and Asia. Alexander never publicly revealed what was said, but when his companion Ptolemy asked, Alexander smiled and said the answer was what his heart desired to hear. From that moment, everything changed. He began wearing the ram's horns of Ammon on his coinage. He founded Alexandria on the Mediterranean coast, personally designing its layout. Egypt transformed him. He stopped being merely a king. October 1st, 331 BC, the plains of Gaugamela near ancient Nineveh in modern-day Iraq. This was the apocalyptic showdown. Darius had spent 2 years assembling the largest army the ancient world had ever seen. Ancient sources claim up to 250,000 men, modern estimates suggest 100,000. War elephants from India. 200 side chariots with blades extending from their wheels. The best cavalry from 15 nations. He had chosen perfectly flat, open terrain, even having it leveled and smoothed further to maximize his chariot's effectiveness. Alexander arrived with 47,000 men. The night before battle, his generals including Old Parmenion begged him to attack at night, surprising the Persians. Alexander refused. "I will not steal victory like a thief." Alexander must defeat Darius openly. At dawn he deployed his forces brilliantly, a refused flank, reinforced center, reserve formations, and his trademark move, the oblique hammer and anvil formation. As the battle raged, the scythe chariots charged. Alexander's troops opened lanes, let them through and killed the drivers. Darius's cavalry tried to envelope the Macedonian left. Then Alexander saw his moment. While Darius's line extended to surround him, a gap opened in the Persian center. Alexander personally led 3,000 companion cavalry in a wedge formation straight into that gap, driving like a spear directly at Darius's position once again. The great king, watching Alexander coming for him a third time, unstoppable, inevitable, broke and fled the battlefield at full gallop. His army, seeing their god-king retreat, collapsed in panic. May 330 BC, Persepolis, the ceremonial capital of Persia, the jewel of the Achaemenid Empire. Its palaces contained unimaginable wealth, 120,000 talents of gold and silver, so much treasure it took 20,000 mules and 5,000 camels to transport it. Alexander had conquered it without a fight. For months he respected it, studied it, even honored it. Then came the symposium, the drinking party. Ancient sources describe Alexander, drunk on wine, being urged by the Athenian courtesan Thaís to avenge Xerxes' burning of Athens 150 years earlier. Whether calculated politics or drunken impulse, what happened next shocked the ancient world. Alexander personally threw the first torch. The greatest palace complex in the known world, built by Darius I and Xerxes, with its magnificent Apollon Hall, towering columns, and stone reliefs depicting subject nations, burned. Some say Alexander regretted it immediately when sober. Others say it was deliberate symbolism. The old Persian Empire was dead. A new age had begun. The ruins still stand today in Iran, a haunting testament to one night when the past was consumed by flame. October 328 BC, Samarkand, in Sogdiana. Central Asia had changed Alexander. He was adopting Persian customs, wearing Persian dress, demanding proskynesis, prostration, surrounding himself with Oriental luxury. His Macedonian veterans were disturbed. At a banquet celebrating Dionysus, wine flowed freely. Alexander boasted of surpassing his father Philip. Clitus the Black, the man who had saved Alexander's life at Granicus, was drunk and angry. He defended Philip's memory, mocked Alexander's Persian pretensions, quoted Euripides critically. The argument escalated. Clitus shouted that Alexander owed everything to Philip's veterans, that he was abandoning Macedonian ways for barbarian customs. Alexander, enraged and intoxicated, grabbed a spear from a guard. His friends tried to restrain him. Clitus was being dragged away. But he broke free, shouted one more insult, and Alexander hurled the spear through the curtain, impaling his childhood friend through the chest. Clitus died instantly. When Alexander realized what he'd done, he tried to kill himself. His guards prevented it. For 3 days he refused food and water, calling himself a murderer, weeping uncontrollably. This moment revealed the dangerous transformation. The philosophical student of Aristotle had become something else, a god-king whose rage could kill even those he loved. Spring 324 BC, Susa, the administrative capital of the former Persian Empire. Alexander orchestrated the most extraordinary wedding ceremony in ancient history, a mass marriage designed to unite East and West. He married Statira, daughter of Darius III, and Persitis, daughter of Artaxerxes III. Himself taking 2 Persian princesses as wives, he was already married to Roxana of Bactria. But more remarkably, he arranged for 80 of his companion officers to marry Persian noblewomen in a synchronized ceremony. Another 10,000 of his soldiers who had already taken Asian wives received gifts. The celebration lasted 5 days, cost 10,000 talents, and featured Persian and Macedonian rituals blended together. Alexander paid off all his soldiers' debts, a staggering sum. This wasn't just pageantry, it was his vision of a united empire where Greek and Persian cultures merged, where the conquered and conqueror became one. His Macedonian veterans were horrified. They saw it as betrayal of their identity. Within months they would mutiny. But Alexander's dream was clear. He wasn't just conquering territory. He was attempting to create a new civilization, a cosmopolitan world culture. Most of his officers divorced their Persian wives immediately after his death. But the vision itself, cultural fusion on a global scale, was revolutionary. 326 BC, Alexander wouldn't stop. After conquering Persia, he pushed into Central Asia. Bactria, Sogdiana, regions that barely had names in Greek. He crossed the Hindu Kush mountains in winter through 12,000-foot passes, a feat his men thought impossible, many dying from cold and altitude. He founded over 20 cities named Alexandria from Egypt to Afghanistan, not just military outposts but cultural fusion experiments, settling Greek and Macedonian veterans with local populations. Then came India. At the Hydaspes River in Punjab, he faced King Porus and a terrifying new weapon, war elephants, 200 of them each carrying armed warriors. It was monsoon season, the river was swollen. Alexander fainted, crossed upstream at night, and defeated Porus through tactical brilliance. But Porus's courage in defeat impressed him so much that Alexander restored him to power and made him an ally. The victory came at a cost. Bucephalus, his beloved horse who had carried him for 18 years, died from battle wounds and age. Alexander wept and founded a city, Bucephala, in his honor. But India broke something in his army. Endless monsoons, unfamiliar diseases, battles against enemies they couldn't see in the jungle. Rumors of even larger armies ahead. At the Hyphasis River, the edge of the world to Greek minds, his men finally said no. The Macedonian army that had followed him 22,000 miles, that had never questioned, refused to go further. Alexander wept in his tent for 3 days, then erected 12 massive altars to the gods and turned back. September 325 BC, the return from India became a nightmare. Alexander chose to lead a portion of his army through the Gedrosian Desert, modern Baluchistan, along the coast, hoping to support his fleet and explore territory unconquered even by Cyrus the Great. It was a catastrophic mistake. The 60-day march through waterless wasteland killed 3/4 of his force. Perhaps 15,000 men died from heat, thirst, and starvation. Flash floods destroyed equipment. Guides lost the way. Soldiers drank seawater and went mad. When supplies arrived, men gorged themselves and died from overeating. Women and children traveling with the army perished. Alexander suffered with them, famously refusing water brought to him in a helmet when there wasn't enough for everyone, pouring it into the sand instead. Ancient historians considered this march worse than all his battles combined. Those who survived called it hell on earth. Alexander emerged haunted, having lost more men to desert and hubris than to any enemy. It was a brutal reminder that nature could defeat even the conqueror of the world. Hephaestion wasn't just Alexander's general. He was his alter ego, the Patroclus to his Achilles, possibly his lover, certainly his soul's mirror. They had grown up together, studied under Aristotle together, conquered the world together. Ancient sources describe them as indistinguishable in Alexander's affection. In 324 BC in Ecbatana, Hephaestion fell ill with fever after a banquet. Alexander was attending games in his honor but rushed back. Hephaestion seemed to recover under his doctor Glaucias's care. Alexander left to watch athletics. Hours later, Hephaestion suddenly died, possibly from typhoid, possibly from drinking wine against medical advice, possibly from medical incompetence. Alexander's grief was mythological in scale. He didn't just mourn, he unraveled. He executed or crucified Dr. Glaucias immediately. He ordered every horse and mule in the empire to have their manes cut in mourning. He had the sacred fire of Zoroastrianism extinguished across the empire, an honor reserved only for the death of a great king. He demolished the shrine of Asclepius in Ecbatana for failing to save his friend. He built a funeral pyre that cost 10,000 talents, the equivalent of building 1,000 warships. He cut his hair, refused food for days, lay across the body. He sent an embassy to the oracle of Siwa demanding that Zeus Ammon declare Hephaestion a god. The oracle compromised, allowing worship as a divine hero. He destroyed an entire mountain tribe, the Cassians, as a funeral sacrifice. This wasn't just grief, it was the terrifying realization that even Alexander, who had conquered the world, couldn't conquer death. Summer 324 BC, Opus on the Tigris River. Alexander's army had reached its breaking point. He announced plans to discharge 10,000 Macedonian veterans and send them home with riches, but also to replace them with 30,000 trained Persian youth in Macedonian style, his successors. To the veterans this felt like betrayal. Everything they'd fought for, the Greek superiority they believed in, was being diluted. They mutinied. Thousands of battle-hardened soldiers shouted insults at their king, threw down their weapons, told him to campaign with his father Ammon instead. It was the ultimate insubordination. Alexander's response was pure Alexander. He leapt from the platform into the crowd, personally pointed out 13 ringleaders, and had them executed immediately. Then he locked himself in his quarters for 3 days, refusing to see anyone, replacing Macedonian positions with Persians. The veterans broke. They came to his tent weeping, begging forgiveness. Alexander emerged, and when an old veteran said, "You made Persians your kinsmen," Alexander replied, "But I make you all my kinsmen." He held a reconciliation banquet for 9,000 people, Macedonians, Persians, and others, where he prayed for harmony and partnership in the empire between Macedonians and Persians. But the fracture was permanent. The dream of unity was dying even before he did. June 323 BC. Babylon, the ancient city Alexander had chosen as his capital for the merged empire he dreamed of creating. He was planning impossible new campaigns. The conquest of Arabia, then Carthage and the western Mediterranean, perhaps even beyond the Pillars of Hercules. His mind never stopped. But after a prolonged banquet with his admiral Nearchus, he fell ill. At first just fever, then excruciating pain. For 12 agonizing days, he slowly died while his generals waited desperately for guidance on who would inherit the greatest empire ever built. Was it poison? Malaria? Typhoid? West Nile virus? Pancreatitis from alcoholism? We still don't know. Ancient sources describe his symptoms day by day: fever, chills, weakness, progressive paralysis. His soldiers, hearing rumors he might already be dead, demanded to see him. In a final act of leadership, Alexander, barely able to move, unable to speak, had his bed carried to the palace entrance where each of his soldiers could file past. 4 hours, thousands of men who had followed him to the ends of the earth walked by their dying king. Unable to speak, he recognized each man with his eyes, raising his hands slightly in greeting. When his closest commanders, Perdiccas, Ptolemy, Seleucus, Lysimachus, and others, gathered around his deathbed and asked, "To whom do you leave the kingdom?" Alexander's final words were either toi kratistoi, to the strongest, or toi kratero, to Craterus. The Greek is ambiguous, perhaps intentionally, or perhaps he simply couldn't speak clearly. He took off his royal ring and handed it to Perdiccas. Hours later, at sunset on June 10 or 11, 323 BC, Alexander the Great died. He was 32 years old. June 323 BC, Alexander's body wasn't yet cold when the arguing began. In the stifling heat of the Babylonian palace, his commanders faced an impossible question: who rules? Alexander's half-brother Aristeus was mentally disabled. His wife Roxana was pregnant, but the child wasn't yet born. Perdiccas held the royal ring. The infantry supported Aristeus. The cavalry wanted to wait for Roxana's child. Weapons were nearly drawn in the throne room. Finally, a compromise: Aristeus would be a figurehead king as Philip III, and if Roxana bore a son, they would rule jointly. She did. Alexander IV was born months later. Perdiccas became regent. But it was a fiction. The real decision had already been made. The empire would be divided. Within days, the partition of Babylon distributed satrapies to the generals. Ptolemy took Egypt, Seleucus took Babylonia, Lysimachus took Thrace, Antigonus took Phrygia, Craterus received Macedonia. They swore oaths of unity. They lied. Within a year, Perdiccas was dead, murdered by his own officers. Within 2 years, the wars of the Diadochi, the successors, had begun. For 40 years, Alexander's generals would tear his empire apart in brutal civil wars. Roxana and young Alexander IV were moved around like chess pieces, eventually imprisoned by Cassander and Amphipolis. In 310 BC, when Alexander IV was about 13, Cassander had both the boy and his mother murdered, extinguishing Alexander's bloodline forever. The dream died with them. 323 to 321 BC, Alexander's body became the most valuable prize in the ancient world. Perdiccas ordered a golden sarcophagus built, so magnificent it took 2 years to complete and required 64 mules to pull. The plan was to return Alexander's body to Macedonia for burial with his ancestors at Igi. But in 321 BC, as the funeral cortege made its way through Syria, Ptolemy, who had taken control of Egypt, made his move. He hijacked the body with military force, bringing it to Memphis, then later to Alexandria. It was a political masterstroke. Possession of Alexander's body legitimized Ptolemy's rule and marked Egypt as the spiritual successor to Alexander's empire. For centuries, Alexander's preserved body in its crystal sarcophagus became Alexandria's most sacred relic. Julius Caesar visited it in 48 BC. Augustus accidentally broke off Alexander's nose while paying respects in 30 BC. Caligula reportedly stole his breastplate. Septimius Severus sealed the tomb in 200 AD. Then, sometime in the chaos of late antiquity between the 3rd and 4th centuries AD, Alexander's body disappeared. Despite centuries of searching, his tomb has never been found. The man who conquered the world has no known grave. Alexander's empire didn't survive him. Within a generation it had fractured into warring kingdoms. But what Alexander started couldn't be stopped by his death. He had fundamentally reshaped 3 continents and human history itself. The Hellenistic age he created lasted 300 years. Greek language became the lingua franca from Spain to India. The Ptolemaic kingdom in Egypt produced the Library of Alexandria, Euclid's geometry, Eratosthenes' measurement of Earth, and Cleopatra. The Seleucid Empire spread Greek culture across Persia and Central Asia. Greco-Buddhist art emerged in Afghanistan and Pakistan. The city of Alexandria became the intellectual capital of the Mediterranean world for nearly a millennium. His military tactics, the combined arms approach, the phalanx, the cavalry charge, the siege warfare innovations, were studied by every commander after him. Julius Caesar wept before his statue in Spain, ashamed he'd accomplished so little at 33 compared to Alexander's achievements at that age. Augustus styled himself after Alexander. Pompey wore Alexander's cloak. Napoleon slept with a copy of Arrian's biography of Alexander under his pillow. Even today, military academies study Gaugamela and Issus. His vision of cultural fusion, marrying Greek and Eastern civilizations, created a cosmopolitan world culture that influenced Rome, Christianity, and Islam. More than a conqueror, Alexander became immortal, the eternal symbol that one person, through vision, courage, and relentless will, can reshape human civilization. He proved that individual human agency matters, that greatness is possible, that the impossible is merely difficult. 23 centuries later, we still measure ambition against Alexander the Great, and we always fall short.